Hi, marketers. This is Dots, and welcome to the Marketing Leadership Podcast. With me here is Purna Virji, Principal Consultant of Content Solution at LinkedIn, and a very popular influencer when it comes to marketing, known the world over. We will discuss high-impact B2B content marketing with thought leadership narratives. I know you guys are ready, so let's get it. Purna, it's been an amazing honor having you here with us. How are you doing?
I'm delighted to be here, Dot. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, I millions of people know you at this point, but my guess is that some don't, especially some that might be listening to this podcast. So, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and your role?
Sure thing. I'm Purna. I am obsessed with content marketing. I have spent my whole career marketing it in different avatars. I started off as a
Mm,
journalist, crossed
mm,
over to the dark side of working in PR, then fell madly in love with digital marketing. And so I've worked agency side, in house, had my own consultancy before landing at a search engine and an ad platform, and now at Microsoft. And now
mhm.
I've been at LinkedIn for the last like almost 3 years, where I am the principal content solutions evangelist for our team. And so that means I get to live, breathe, eat, sleep content marketing and work with different businesses to share how they can grow their businesses through the power of content.
That's interesting. There is also a different side to you, and we will be talking about that a bit more at the end of the episode. But I just want to tease our listeners, just so they can stick to the very end of the episode. So you just released your book, an amazing book, High Impact Marketing.
Yes, right here.
Um, yeah, that's it.
My big baby.
Now, if you're listening, there will be a very special information at the very end, so stick around. But before then, I would like Pona to give us a bit of a trailer, if you will. What will people learn from the book in general?
So the biggest thing that I wanted to add to this book is to address some of those questions that I've been hearing for years from marketers at all levels, from all types of companies, B2B, B2C, all over the world. They all
Mm,
tend to be the same set of questions. Well, how can I take my like 20 years of experience that I've learned through many mistakes, through many mentors, through working in startups, through large global enterprise companies, working across different functions, so whether it's
mhm,
product marketing, or adult learning and development. So I've taken all the best things that I've learned from cross disciplines and put together a very strategy plus actionable book. So every chapter is a different stage in the process. So I start all the
mm.
way from understanding what's going to move the needle for you, for your customers. How do you go about it? How do you brainstorm effectively, to content creation, to planning with distribution in mind so that you can really work your assets off so you're not working your rear end
The
off.
other one off, yeah. I get what you mean. I get what you mean. And yeah, I like that. The reason why I like that is because I think growing up in my career, I knew immediately the importance of being efficient when it comes to marketing in general. The importance of keeping your strategy very pragmatic and simple, and also giving it as much high impact as possible. And it's not just about in the content side, even the way you run ads, the way you develop marketing BI and things like that. So this is an interesting one. I am reading it, and like I said, at the end we are going to give you guys something regarding that, so that you can also get this book for yourself. Okay, now to the episode, Pona. When it comes to thought leadership narratives as an approach, as a content approach for high impact content, product education is very, very important at all levels of the funnel, whether it's acquisition, retention, or even revenue expansion. But I would like us to start from the top. So on top of thought leadership, the high impact marketing in general, what do you think are some of the ingredients of an high impact marketing strategy? So much so that if this if any of these ingredients are not present, I don't think my content strategy is solid enough.
Well, we could spend 8 hours on this question because I love it so much. But if I had to sum it up in one sentence, I'm always like, when you are creating your content, please just flip the switch from what do I want to say, what do I need to say or promote, switch it to what does my audience need to hear. And if you just take that one small mental shift, you're already a long way there. So I would say it comes to like 3 or 4 core things. Like one starts with the strategy. It starts with connecting your ultimate content goals and metrics back to the business value. Here's what I mean by that, right? So often content marketing, we get this far off seat in the corner and we're like, oh, they just create content, right? And they're like, oh, you guys just do blogs or social media. And I'm like, well, that's not what we do. Like content touches everything you do, whether it's SEO, whether it's brand or so on. We just need to build that bridge between revenue impact and that. So it really starts by what's the business case that you're trying to solve for, the business goal or objective. Once you know that, then you're like, okay, well, what audience behavior change would need to happen in order to drive that behavior outcome? And then you think about, okay, so who are the people that are most likely to take that action? Who are they? What do they like? Where do they hang out? And if you understand these 3 things, then you'll have started with the goal, start with the why, as Simon Sinek says, and then your content will be successful. So that's a nutshell. If I can add 2 more points quickly.
Please,
So
come on.
the other point is to really, really like understand your audience. And I don't mean just those personas. One of my favorite examples, I read this in the BBC a couple of years ago, where they said that, hey, would you create the same content for 2 people who fit this description? Males born in 1948, both live in the UK, spend most of the time in London.
I have seen that. Prince Charles
They're
with one rock
independently
star.
wealthy. Yeah. And then they have been married twice. They have grown children and so on. And people are like, oh, yeah, it sounds like so similar, but it's one's Ozzy Osbourne and one's King Charles. You're like, I would
Ozzy Osbourne,
bet. Yeah, I would completely bet that they would consume different content, right? Personas are just high level. Like you want to go deeper into your audiences. Where do they spend the time? Like, why do they need to buy? Where do they spend their time? Where do they learn? How do they use different platforms, right? Not everyone uses a platform in the same way. So how do they do? What sparked their desire to buy? What are their goals? What are their fears? And getting that depth is super, super important. And then the third thing, the final thing is meet them where they're at, right? So often, especially in B2B, everyone wants to be super rational and be like, yes, these are the products and the features, and this is what it will do. But that's not always the case, right? People aren't that aware. They are aware, but not sure. They don't know who you are. They may have different objections. So try to do that. So longer answer.
No. It's I completely agree with you, and we can both agree that companies like Sparktoro, led by our beloved Rand Fishkin, it's a great tool in terms of customer research that ties to what Harvard calls the job to be done. I am a follower of that concept. When I learned that about 4 years ago, in terms of what is the customer need, what is that job that they need to be done, and how many of those jobs are required in their share of life, and where can your product line or service be involved in that share of life. So having to do that and mapping that out with your objectives, I think it informs everything. It informs why volume may not be as impactful compared to quality, for example, and why you need to, speak to the customer and let that story, resonate. And of course, I don't want to go too much into, you've already spoken about what to look out for when it comes to, customer research, and I completely agree with you on that. But if you're listening, just make sure to keep it very simple. Human needs are not as complex as people think it is. Marketing sometimes make it to be very complex, but it's not. And you want to connect to that as much as possible. Now, when it comes to high impact content approaches from a strategic perspective, aside from the thought leadership that we are currently going to focus on in a moment, are there other angles through which marketers can deliver this high impact content campaign, if you put it that way?
There are. Some of the key things to think about is that sales cycles are getting so much longer. And I know we're focusing on B2B a lot here. And so sales
Sure, feel
cycles,
free to jump around.
yeah, we'll do both, but like especially in B2B, which has really long sales cycles, especially longer and like this time of uncertainty, etc. And it takes a really long time to keep engaging people. And like, how do you do that? If you kept saying like, take my demo, take my demo, take my demo, like all the time for a year, like people are going to get sick of you really fast. It takes no effort to ignore content, right? It takes effort to actually consume it, and you're giving up something to consume content. So you need to make it worth their while. So some of the angles you need to think about is like, what's the value that they're going to get from it? And the other thing that I think people miss a lot is the action that they should take at the end. So even if it's a much more awareness generated piece, you always want to give people a go do or a next step to go and figure out whether it's just like come back and like watch another episode of Dots' podcast, come back and watch something else, right? Give them that next step. And the second thing is the third thing is selling.
Yeah.
The big misconception, and Dots, I'm sure you've heard this in content marketing, is that we are just here to educate or entertain and empower. I'm like, no, dude. At the end of the day, like we're all here to sell in
Make
some
money.
right? Yeah, we have to grow our business, even if it's a nonprofit. There's some form of revenue exchange that needs to happen to justify being in business. And so never forget that you're there to sell. And so study selling, right? There's 6 buying motivations, for example, that have stood the test of time. Like, are you understanding those? Are you leaning into those? Are you proactively addressing different objections? For example, like Dots, I could tell you, let's say I had this magic SaaS program and I'm like, Dots, try this, it's going to save you so much time. And you're like, well, I have plenty of time. What I don't have is I don't know who you are, or your price point seems excessive. I don't trust you enough to justify that, right? So if I'm going to keep hitting you over the head with like, try this amazing magic SaaS product because it will save you 50 hours a week. And you're like, well, I don't care about that. So you want to try to hit different buying motivation, different objections proactively.
So I guess it's important for marketers to somehow, I guess, not just marketers, but an entire commercial team. So when I mean commercial team, I mean marketing, sales, finance, and service. Ask the questions from the market first, just to figure out what those objections are. Would that be the right way to look at it? Because, there is now power to the customer.
Oh, it is. So like one of my favorite things to do, and I've done this at every company I've worked at, I've recommended every customer that every client I've worked with to do this, is to spend half an hour with your sales team to get your best customer service reps or your best like sales reps and buy them a pizza, buy them lunch if you have to, whatever it takes, just beg for their time. And even with a 30 or 45-minute call, like you can ask them like, hey, for this particular product or offering, like what are the most common objections that you hear from customers? Like, what are they worried about? And then what do you always say that helps you get the sale? Like, what are the different motivations? And what are their, what do they ask the common questions? If you got these 3 or 4 things, you're already super well ahead. So do that, talk to your sales reps, and 2, go online and do your research. See the reviews that they're leaving about you and see the reviews that they're leaving about your competitors. Then you will hear about things in your customers' own words about what they like, what they don't like, what they value, what they don't value. And you can really use their words to create your copy. It's magical.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll make sure to use that. Still want to discuss a lot of strategic items with regards to this topic with you. It's been so far so great, and one of which is, I guess, the aspect of inclusivity when you are considering thought leadership. And I'm not talking about thought leadership from an academic space. If you're listening, you probably know I'm talking about telling a brand story. In some cases, guiding buyers as they make their own journeys. But in general, from your own experience, what is the impact of inclusive content? Does it help with relatability? Like, I can relate to this. Does it help make global marketing strategies much easier because you are communicating globally at a local level? What are some of those benefits to making sure you are inclusive and authentic at the same time? Because sometimes brand overdo this whole DEI thing.
No, I hear you on that, right? Because I mean, it is such an important topic. It is important for so many of us because there's a very core human need. Like, let's take out our marketer hat. Let's put on our simple human hat. We all want to be seen and recognized for who we are as a whole, not one aspect of our existence, right? You could look at me and be like, oh, the Indian girl. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm Indian American, yes, but there's more to me. I'm also a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a marketer, I'm an author. I want to be seen for all of it. I don't want to be reduced to none of us. And that's just an example. None of us want to be reduced to like just one aspect of our belonging. And sometimes people don't realize that, or let me put it this way. We try to chase after the averages, and the average, there's no average person per se, right? And we tend to ignore people on both sort of ends of the sort of curve, so to speak. And we're leaving money on the table. So let's just talk about it from a business.
The word is standard. We are looking for the standard person, the standard individual.
Exactly. What are the outliers who you're not speaking to? So often businesses will, or especially marketers, especially in product marketing, you'll see this, that they'll overestimate their audience's interest and awareness about the product. They'll be speaking full of jargon. Their content is full of jargon. It's full of complex language. And to that, I say, like, complex language is a bug. It's not a feature. Like, it doesn't make you look smart. You want to try to speak so that everyone can understand you. And that sense, you reach way more people. Like, why do you want to go after a segment of the market when, if with the same effort, with the same content, you can reach even more people and grow your mind share and market share? And we've seen the brands that have succeeded, like Rihanna's Fenty Beauty, for example, right? She came in and revolutionized the whole makeup space by adding in all of these additional shades of makeup, and she made millions and millions and millions so quickly, and very became the standard amongst everyone, right? The Dove Beauty, they've consistently had ads that talk about real beauty. You see, Nike even putting other sports, like, most people will do like the football, the tennis, the common sports, but they're putting skateboarding, they're putting Gen Z influencers in their marketing as too. You're reaching more people, you're helping them feel seen, you're reaching a larger market, and that is not just good for business, but it is key to survival going forward, especially if we look at the younger generation. Just a Pew Research data shows that Gen Z here is the most racially diverse. They have been brought up with this view, this screen side view of the world around them. They're so much more aware, they're so much more inclusive. Like, gender fluidity is so much more like, if you're a brand that still has enter your gender, like male or female, on your form, like, what are you doing? You're missing out on opportunities. Like, or if you're like, choose your race or ethnicity, and then you're giving people the option to choose one. I'm like, that is not the reflective of the world we live in. And so your marketing needs to be reflective of the world that we live in. And I will say this, and I don't mean this to be preachy in any way, but I think we forget that as marketers, like, what we do matters so much. We can either make people feel seen, or we can reinforce their sort of invisibility, and no one likes that, right? If you look at commercials, you look at print ads, how many times do you see commercials with maybe plus size individuals like me, or people older individuals, individuals who might have a form of disability? You don't see this in ads. Like, why are we making these large segments of the population who have immense buying power, who have, a desire to go out there and purchase? We just forget, because it's what people have always done, and it needs to be deliberate. for us to go in. So anyway, I'm very passionate about this topic, but
No,
I
no, no.
think
I know you. I know you are, and I would say some brands are starting to, make this in terms of like the way they communicate a little bit diverse with some of these pictures of plus size and all. But it's not as mainstream as we would like it to be, and I think it's important to have that happen. I guess it's what Purna is saying here. Take a look at this podcast. We have both the host and the guest from not born in the US or in Canada, and with all kinds of varying accents. But what is important is the value, right? The value, the buying power. Even go into that. Thank God for the world of capitalism. So if you're a brand right now, it's important to make diversity the strategy, not part of the strategy, but it should be the strategy to reaching every possible human that you could possibly can.
it
Let's look
should
at,
just be a
yeah, go ahead,
natural
please.
part of your campaigns, like inclusive, that you just take that extra moment to review your language. Like, is there anything that I've used that could alienate some people, or could, not be
Yes,
usable
yes.
for some people, right? There's just simple things like that, because it's not always just, maybe people have different proficiencies in the language that you're writing in. People will have different, like, comprehensive skills. People will have different devices to access. So it's
Mm-mm.
not that you have to do those chest thumping DEI campaigns that so many businesses do, where you just know that this is for PR speak. This is not really how you act, but it's literally just make it the natural part. Because at some point in the world,
Yeah.
one of my good friends, Laura Mundo, has said this, like, eventually no brand should go viral or be recognized just for being inclusive, right? It should just be the norm. And so it takes probably a little extra time, a couple of hours or two, to just do a little accessibility checker on your content. Review your language. Is there anything that you can change, reword? Review your imagery. Like, are you being
Mm.
authentically, genuinely inclusive, rather than the, oh, I've got this person on a wheelchair in the picture, I've checked the box, I'm super inclusive, right? That is not
Authenticity is the
what,
main thing. You just have to be authentic. You have to find what
yeah.
works for you. It's in the race for commercial profits. That's sometimes it's very, you have to slow down and think
Mhm.
about how authentic you are. I agree with you. I think authentic, it's not that people are not trying, it's just that people are not authentic enough in doing it. People want
Yeah.
to do what competitors are doing. No, you want to pick an aspect of this ODI stuff and focus on that, because that fits your brand purpose, and that is always what helps. And do your own thing your way. Not just like you said. I like that quote. Don't uh be viral because you are trying to run a social campaign, because it's supposed to be the norm. Be viral for something else. So that's a quote that I'm going to remember going forward. But sorry for cutting you there. Were you going to finish your thoughts?
No, I think I finished my thought. Oh, the thought's
Okay.
gone now. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Sorry, I'm just as passionate or about
No,
this part of the topic.
no, I love this. I love this dialogue. This is such a fun podcast, as I'm sure all the
Yeah,
listeners agree.
yeah, they do. Let's look at channels. Channels is something else, when it comes to, the thought leadership angle of high impact content marketing. What are some of your, and feel free to do, B2B, B2C here. What are some of your top channels where you think people typically would go to learn more about a product and be demand ready, if we use it that way? From your own experience, I'm not to say that marketers must always follow this, because it depends on the brand, obviously. But from your own experience, what are some of those channels that have just worked, that have been that have been a great distribution platform for high impact content or thought leadership content?
That's a really good question. And I can say, like, the only one answer that will hold true in posterity is that the right channel for you is the right channel where your audience spends their time and is receptive to your messaging. And that's the one thing that's held true. And there's so much variance by brand,
Mm,
platforms come and
mm,
go. But
mm,
if you can ideate, because different people use platforms in different ways, like if you know that maybe people are going to open an email, and like, do they tend to respond well to email? Like, does that work for you? In some businesses it will do great, and for some it just may not make sense. For some it's social media, some it is short form. So have a presence on multiple platforms and channels, but then really just pick your top, handful to really focus in on and build and hone. And as long as you're reaching and engaging your customers in the right way and your audiences, that's really the ones that's going to work for you. Like, I wish there was one formula, but like, always do A, B, and C, and you'll get it. But sadly, there's no. At least I haven't found such an easy answer yet.
yeah. I also like the perspective of, have that spread at the initial stages, and from there see if you got a handful, and I think that's the key word, a handful of channels that have provided, I don't know, highest conversion rate or highest engagement rate. Actually, that's the first KPI, better KPI, to your brand, and those have delivered some level of demand generation, and they've always been the loyal customers, and so on and so forth. So you having that methodology is something that would always help. We have, like you said, platforms come and go. We just had threads come out, and what I heard, I don't know how true it is that yes, 100 people joined in, I don't know how many hours or days, and now people have dropped out. Some people for some reason don't find it relatable or something like that, and so the number has shrunk. So there's always that dynamism with channels, but at the end of the day, you want to have a funnel approach to it. So that make a lot of sense.
And then just
Now,
find
yeah,
your
go
mix,
ahead.
right? You want to have your owned, you want to have your paid, you want to have your social, right? So just get that mix, but don't spread yourself too thin. Because
Okay.
eventually, if you're going to be, oh, I'm on 20 platforms, I've got to pay with all of that, you're just going to get so resentful that you're not going to post anywhere. So, as you said, fewer things done better is that. So have a presence on different platforms, but then see what works for you. I mean, there's a really funny quote that my friend Lexi Mills said. She's like, listen, if you are a tall fungus cream, there's like no expectation to have the most beautiful like Instagram or TikTok, because I mean, it's not an aesthetically pleasing one, but just have
Mhm.
a presence there and guide people to like one of your other channels, for example, right? So, and then focus your time there on where it's going to work for you.
Yeah, exactly that. There's a bit of a, I guess, difficult subject for marketers, which I would like us to trash out next, and that is the thought leadership content. I guess the creative side of it. When it comes to thought leadership narratives, it's a very difficult one because we are going to get approval from those who are asking for quick results. So, from your own experience, how have you, I guess, made a compelling internal proposal for stakeholders for content marketing campaigns, especially the high impact ones, that are able to sell the brand purpose rather than sell revenue, at least for the near term? It will continue to. I think it's getting better for the bigger brands. Maybe for some of the smaller brands as well. But there is still this constant shift of whatever we are doing now, it has to show revenue immediately, or there has to be some sort of an attribution, and so on and so forth. And there are some parties that are embracing the brand story, embracing the fact that if you make me feel, to belong to your brand, then I will stick with you forever, and I'll pay whatever you want me to pay when it comes to your product. So how do you sell that internally with stakeholders in terms of creative storytelling content that may not seem to have a revenue hook as of today, but is designed to drive sustainable commercial outcomes?
To that, I say that I know as marketers, we really love to create this distinction, but every
Mm,
piece of content that you put out will change the brand perception of your company. So if
Okay.
you send out something super salesy and email, and if it's valuable, it'll still be seen as good. Or you can do the most, you know, high floofy, like, you know, hey, I'm doing this for sustainability, and it has nothing to do with your like buy now, get a demo now. But all
Mm-mm-mm.
of that will also lead to different brand perception, and it may be enough to just convince or stick out in the mind. And so ultimately, one, you've got to make your case and be like, what's the outcome that I'm trying to drive, right, for the company? So let's use
Yeah.
this as an example. Let's say we are a car company and we're coming up with a brand new fancy schmancy electric vehicle. And so your outcome, of course, as a company, your business goal would be, I want to sell more cars. So
Yeah.
then if I think the business change, I mean, the audience behavior change that needs to happen to help sell more cars is they need to come in and maybe take a test drive, or they need to go to the website and do the specs. So then you're like, okay, what type of content do I need to tie that? And like some cases, you could be leaning on what are the different heuristics that people may want to be, you know, excited about a fancy schmancy car that's coming out. Who's the right audience? Who'd be into it? What messaging would appeal? Where did they spend time? What are their demographics?
Mm.
Then you figure that out, but you'd already know what your end goal is. You'd know the behavior change that you're trying to drive. So in that way, your strategy plan, you're like, this is my path to revenue. In some cases, I'm going to be like, yes, it's got this much fuel velocity here, it's got this. That's your more direct salesy approach. But then in
Yeah.
some cases, you can be like, listen, I'm just talking about my brand, and like electric vehicle is important to us because of sustainability, blah, blah, blah. That could be just another decision making factor that people have. So I say there isn't that much distinction as people say, like any content can do that job. So do that. So that's really the one. But the
Mm.
second way, the easiest way that I found to like really make the pitch is to say that you never know when people are ready to buy or when they might want something, right? And we might like to
Mm.
think that yes, this funnel exists and everyone goes through every single funnel, but that really
That
doesn't
is
happen in
true.
the real world, right? We know that it's just a handy tool for us to sort of figure out, like, are we servicing all needs? But one of my favorite frameworks comes from Eugene Schwartz in his
Mm.
1956 book, Breakthrough Advertising, where he talked about people have 5 different levels of awareness. And so you need content that speaks to these different levels of awareness. So
Mm.
at one end of the spectrum is completely unaware. So these people just don't know that there is a better option or that they might have a problem that needs solving. And so your content really needs to talk to them about, hey, this is why you need to pay attention. To this. Then you have more like maybe now they're aware that there's a problem, but they just don't
Mhm.
know that what solutions might exist. So you need content for that. Then they might know that solutions exist, but they may not know who you are as a brand. So then you need your more brand. Then they may
Mm.
be even like product aware. So they're aware of you. Maybe they're deciding between you and your competitors. So how do you stand
Mm.
out? Like thought leadership
Yeah.
is such a good way to stand out in that case, right? Because very often, especially in some products, there's not much differentiation between you and your competitor, right? So how do you
Yeah.
market it with the same things, with the same features? Thought leadership is going to be the differentiator there, right? Even at that product aware where they're bottom funnel trying to choose. And then finally, it's really like the most aware. They're like, oh, come buy, etc. So just think about it in that sense and make the case because you want to meet people where they are. So you need different kinds of content that speaks to their needs and whether you want to, marketing is not sales. We're not instant, right? You don't just turn on a campaign and be
Yeah.
like, boom, leads tomorrow, right? You
Yeah.
have to keep sowing the seeds so that way your crops will grow. Um, so hopefully that helps a little. Like the day you plant the seeds is not the day you harvest the fruit.
Is that exactly? Yeah, you've given like three analogies on this, so I completely agree, and I think with the shift in whether it's geopolitical landscape or the economic landscape, um, corporations or businesses are beginning to look at the I guess, non-revenue tangible objectives as
Mhm.
acceptable from a marketing perspective, and that might help marketers, going forward. So that makes a lot of sense. We have been enjoying this so far, and but I know our listeners sometimes, they may be a bit distracted. So here is always something that we bring in to just make them a little bit fired again. And it's called the performance rapid fire. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I want the truth and nothing but the truth. So help you God. Are you ready?
I'm nervous, but yes.
Okay. What's your best marketing KPI? And I don't want to hear sales.
It's just revenue influence ultimately, because that I know is going to help the company. It's going to give me a bigger seat at the table at the company.
Influence revenue. I heard that term recently. So that makes sense now. Okay, good. Second question. How long do you use social media every day? Truth and nothing but the
Hours.
truth.
True answer. So 3 or 4 hours every day, like for sure. Like I'm on all the time. So I do.
Of course, it's for work, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah. Part of it is for work, and then part of it is for fun. But yeah, of course,
it's just
I work at LinkedIn, so I'm on LinkedIn like all the time. It is like even
that's
I
true.
was before I worked there. It's a great platform. I always learn so much.
That's true. That's true. You're right there. Last question. What is your favorite marketing quote? And you look like you've read a lot of books. You've got a book yourself. So yeah, give us that one that you love the most.
I think I always go back to David Ogilvy because he's just a genius. And his quote is that you can't bore people into buying. You can only interest them into buying. So you just have to, and I love that because that is, it just sets the stage so much for what we do as content marketers. Like we have to engage them. We have to be what's interesting.
Yeah, not overload them with content until they bounce or they churn.
Yeah, my favorite example, just to throw in an example, if I know it's not
Mhm,
rapid,
mhm.
is the blend tech, right? Who would have thought that product demos of a blender would become like these viral videos that everyone wants to watch? But what they did was they showed that blender, like blending things like iPhones or glow sticks or so on. And you're like, oh, I want to keep watching this
Yeah,
one. This is the coolest blender ever. And you're like, see, you make something that people were interested in.
I've seen those videos too. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's really it. Robert Rose and Joe Polluti wrote the book Killer Marketing,
Mhm.
and it's also part of this model as well, where you have high impact content that delivers revenue in the long run. Okay. Before I let you go, I still have a couple of questions because why not? I really enjoy this time with you, and we are looking at a bit of best practices, for different kinds of marketers listening here. And the kind of best practices that I like are those that we need to avoid. So, for example, what are the practices we should avoid when creating high impact thought leadership content? What are the things that we are doing now that we need to stop doing? Whatever comes to your mind on that.
One, spending hours and hours and hours creating awesome content, but then just not putting in the work to put it into the hands of people, right? Getting it out there. So make sure you're spending, a proportionate time on distribution as well. So that's another one because everyone's
Mm.
like, oh, I posted it once, like people were interested and no. So that's one. The second thing is sometimes giving up too soon on a piece of content. They're like, oh, I posted this and it didn't work. And we're like, well, maybe there was other factors. Like try it in a different avatar, try it at a different time, a different platform, a different format, see what that works. So that would be two. And then maybe I'll just give you a third one, which is just trying to optimize for the algorithms versus people, right? So often, like we're
Mm.
just spending our time trying to outsmart algorithms, but the house always wins, right? The algorithm's always going to catch up, and it's so pointless. Create for people, people like people, people relate to people, people buy from people. So, you want to make sure you're building for people.
Human to human. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you can just keep chasing these algorithms, but as long as you're connecting to people, people will post, people will like, people will comment, people will share. The algorithms will do that. So
And
um
they
I, I, com-
reward that. Yeah.
I completely agree with you on that. There is a bit of a technical side when it comes to thought leadership content, and which is the subject of thought leaders themselves. Do you think in 2023, brands need to, or in this decade, whatever, brands need to have some sort of a face or a product face or a product line face to their brand to help further drive the brand story? or you think the brand does not really need that? The brand as a group can do their thing. What do you think about, involving thought leaders in high impact content?
Well, I personally feel it's quite important to have multiple angles and multiple people telling your story. So your brand is very important. Perhaps a really good example would be Apple. Apple every year they do their big launches. So you'll hear like the CEO Tim Cook will go up and then he'll talk about it from his standpoint. Then
Yeah,
he'll bring in the different engineers
that's true.
who built the product. They'll talk
Yeah,
about it from their point of view and their angle, and they
yeah.
have their own following. And then you'll hear from like journalists. Other journalists will write something. So people will read PC World, Macro, whatever,
Mm,
and try
mm,
to
mm,
read
mm,
more about what they said. And so all of these become, and it's just different angles and different ways of approaching the same story. You're talking about new product launches, and then the
mm,
brand, like Apple's website and the landing pages will go way more detail into the specs, etc. So you want multiple people telling your story because they have different audiences. People will again connect to humans. It's easier to build trust and rapport and follow
yeah.
humans as well, because it's just human nature to want to do that a little bit. So
Mm,
yeah, I would definitely agree. And don't just leave it to the two or three like senior executives. Like promote your employees, encourage them to share, encourage them to post, help them build their brands, because then that's just going to reinforce your brand as a company, both from the marketing side, but also from the human, the HR side, where you
mm.
want to be seen as a company that people want to work at. So you'll help attract better talent as well.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well said. And I agree with that as well. It's been in practice in many companies that I've been involved in and should continue to be. So, that makes a lot of sense. When it comes to looking at future customers, and how they influence content and how they influence product. From your experience, have you been able to work with brands that are able to engage with internal stakeholders, employees, customers, and also external stakeholders like you just mentioned the press and all these people in the Apple example? Have you worked with those kinds of parties in some sort of a unison in informing uh, product campaigns, content strategies, making it better and things like that? And how have you done that, if so?
So yes, I have, and how I've done so, it's all about my book. So read that.
Mm.
It's for the core things out
No, why
there.
not?
At a high level. Yeah, storytelling really starts from within. You want to get your people are like your number one assets, your number one stakeholders and cheerleaders, right? So you want to get
Mm,
them excited and involved and give them little previews if you're launching something. Help them all, because they could all be evangelists for your brand and for your product. Empower them to go and post. I've worked at companies that shall remain nameless that did this so well, where they said that we'd come in, we're launching this, here's this
mm.
post that you can, put in your own words and put it out there. It just helps drive
Like a
tons of
brand kit.
volume. Exactly.
Yeah.
So everything that you'd want. And then I love, there's certain brands that I've seen that will just highlight some of their employees' work automatically. And that always sticks out. It gives a human interest side. A couple of recent ones that I just saw. So I didn't work on this campaign, but where can they find me? I'm obsessively on
Yeah.
LinkedIn all the time, but I'm also on X, formerly known as Twitter, as well. That's where I spend the most of my time online. So, yeah. But
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
LinkedIn.
So Pona, we could go on and on, about this. It's been an amazing time. A very unique perspective as well. I'm sure that our listeners will be really, really happy, taking a lot of notes and enjoying the fun with this conversation. One thing our listeners will also get, especially those who have waited to the end, is the details regarding your promotion, the promotion with your book. Again, if you are listening, I have gotten the book myself. You should get the book, High Impact Content Marketing. And Pona, please, would you want to, first tell us where people can find you on a day-to-day basis. And also, please share details about your book, where people can get your book, and that little special something.
Absolutely. Well, if you ever want to nerd out more about marketing, I am so delighted to chat. You can find me on LinkedIn. I spend most of my time there. I'm also on X, formerly known as Twitter. I spend most of my time on these two platforms. And so please hit me up. I'd love to connect and learn more. And if you are looking to get high impact content marketing, you could find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or your friendly bookseller near you. But as a thank you for listening, I would love to share a special discount code that you can get from my lovely publishers, Kogan Page. So on koganpage.com, you can use the code HICM for 20% off the book, should you wish to.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do that, as soon as possible. Get the book and improve your thinking with your marketing strategy. And who knows, books like this will get you even a better job. So I would advise that you should not take this, for granted. That's all for today. It's been an amazing run. Thank you so much, guys. See more episodes at dotlovesmarketing.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the Marketing Leadership Podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Till next episode, connect the dots.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Listen Network. There will be links to resources mentioned in today's show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.